3 years ago, I was a freelance copywriter living in a tiny apartment outside Chicago. When I say tiny apartment, I mean if I stretched my arms out too far while yawning, I'd accidentally turn off the kitchen light. The kitchen and living room were basically in a committed relationship. The bedroom was somehow also the office. And the office was mostly a desk covered in coffee cups, sticky notes, and motivational quotes I no longer believed. At the time, I was 28. I had recently escaped corporate life. And by escaped, I mean dramatically quit after spending 6 consecutive Zoom meetings pretending to care about PowerPoint slides. I wanted freedom. I wanted flexibility. I wanted to work from coffee shops while wearing hoodies and calling myself a digital entrepreneur. You know, the dream. The internet sold me a fantasy. Freelancing looked easy online. Everywhere I looked, somebody was posting screenshots. I made $15,000 this month. I got my first client in 24 hours. Here's how I built a 6-figure business while traveling through Europe. Meanwhile, I was sitting in my apartment wondering if frozen pizza counted as a financial plan. But I believed him. So I saved some money, built a website, created a portfolio, updated LinkedIn, opened Fiverr, opened Upwork, joined freelance Facebook groups, bought courses, watched YouTube videos, downloaded productivity apps, downloaded other productivity apps to manage the first productivity apps. I was ready. Or so I thought. What I didn't realize was that finding clients would become the hardest thing I'd ever done. And honestly, the nightmare started almost immediately. The first month felt exciting. Every morning, I'd wake up motivated. Coffee brewing, laptop open, new opportunities waiting. At least, that's what I imagined. Reality looked slightly different. I'd spend 6 hours sending proposals. Then, I'd refresh my inbox. Nothing. Refresh again. Nothing. Refresh again. Still nothing. By day 10, I knew the Gmail loading animation better than some of my relatives. I applied for everything. Blog writing, email copy, website copy, product descriptions, social media posts, anything. If a business needed words, I was applying. Sometimes I'd spend 30 minutes writing a customized proposal. The client wouldn't even open it. Other times I'd receive messages. My excitement would spike. Then I'd read them. Can you write 50 blog articles for $30? I wish I was joking. One client wanted an entire website written for less money than I spent on coffee that week. Another offered exposure. Exposure. My favorite currency, right behind monopoly money. And things got even stranger. One guy told me he'd pay after his business became profitable, which sounded suspiciously similar to me working for free forever. But here's where I made my first mistake. I thought the problem was my skills, not my strategy. So instead of fixing my client acquisition process, I kept buying courses. Because obviously the solution to having no money was spending more money. Makes perfect sense. At the time, it felt logical. Now, it feels like something a raccoon would do with a credit card. By month 2, panic started creeping in. My savings account was shrinking, rent was approaching, and every freelancer on social media seemed to be thriving. You ever notice how nobody posts screenshots of rejection emails? Nobody tweets, "Just got ignored by my 73rd prospect this week." Nobody posts, "Made negative money today." No, everybody's apparently making 6 figures while drinking iced coffee on a beach. Meanwhile, I was developing a deeply personal relationship with anxiety. Every morning started with the same ritual. Check bank account, regret checking bank account. Check it again, regret it harder. Then I'd start applying for jobs. Not freelance jobs. Regular jobs. The very jobs I'd proudly left behind. And that's when things got weird. Because every time I opened a job application, I felt sick. Not physically, emotionally. I didn't want to go back. I wanted freelancing to work. I just couldn't figure out why it wasn't. Then one night, something happened. Something small, something stupid, something that changed everything, at least temporarily. I was scrolling through Reddit, avoiding my problems professionally, when I saw a comment from another freelancer. It said, "Stop looking for clients where everyone else is looking."
That's it. One sentence. No course, no funnel, no guru wisdom. Just one sentence. And for some reason, it stuck in my brain. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Because up until that moment, I had been fishing in the exact same pond as everybody else. Thousands of freelancers competing for the same opportunities. Thousands of proposals. Thousands of people. No wonder nobody noticed me. But I still didn't know what to do. And my bank account was running out of patience.
A few weeks later, I hit rock bottom. At least I thought it was rock bottom. Turns out, freelancing always has a basement below the basement. I had exactly $417 left. Rent was due soon. Credit card balances were growing. My confidence had completely disappeared. I stopped telling people how freelancing was going because I was tired of giving fake optimistic answers. Things are good. No, they weren't. Lots of opportunities. There weren't. Building momentum. Momentum was nowhere to be found. My parents started asking questions. Friends started asking questions. Even my dentist somehow asked questions. Why was everybody suddenly interested in my career? One afternoon, I walked into a grocery store with a calculator open on my phone. Not because I was budgeting, because I literally needed to know if I could afford groceries. That moment hurt. A lot. I remember standing in front of a shelf, comparing two brands of pasta. One cost 99 cents. The other cost $1.29. And I stood there for almost 2 minutes debating 30 cents. 30 cents! That was the moment I seriously considered quitting. I went home, opened my laptop, pulled up job listings, and started preparing to surrender. But before I clicked submit, an email arrived. And I still remember the subject line because it completely changed the direction of the story. The subject line said, "Quick question about your portfolio." And at first, I almost ignored it.
The funny thing is that the email almost ended up in the trash. Not because it looked suspicious, because by that point, I had developed a survival mechanism. Whenever I saw a new email, I automatically assumed it was either a rejection, a scam, or another software company trying to sell me an AI tool that promised to increase productivity by 700%. So I nearly ignored it. Thankfully, curiosity won. I opened it. The message was short. Very short. It said, "Hey, I came across your portfolio. Do you have time for a quick call tomorrow?" That was it. No details, no company name, no explanation, no budget, nothing. Just enough information to make my brain panic. I immediately became convinced this was my big break. Then I became convinced it was definitely a scam. Then I became convinced it was both somehow. I spent the next 4 hours stalking the sender online. LinkedIn, website, Twitter, old interviews, business reviews. I became a freelance FBI agent. Eventually, I learned they owned a small software company. A real company with real employees and, most importantly, real money. Suddenly, I was excited again, which was dangerous because hope is powerful. But unrealistic hope can absolutely body slam your emotions. The next morning, I joined the Zoom call 15 minutes early because freelancers don't arrive early. We arrive absurdly early and stare at ourselves in the webcam, wondering why our face looks weird. The founder joined. We talked. He seemed nice, professional, normal, which immediately made me suspicious. Because by that point, most clients I'd spoken to sounded like villains in freelance horror stories.
The conversation went surprisingly well. Then he asked the question every struggling freelancer dreams about hearing. What would you charge? I almost passed out. Inside my head, 12 different personalities started negotiating. One wanted to charge $500. One wanted $5,000. One wanted to work for free just to be safe. Eventually, I gave a number that felt terrifying, a number higher than anything I'd ever charged before. Then, silence. The longest silence in human history. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 15 seconds. My soul left my body. Then he said, "Sounds reasonable." Reasonable? Reasonable? I had mentally prepared for rejection. Instead, he accepted immediately. Which meant one of two things. Either I finally priced myself correctly, or I had accidentally undercharged by a horrifying amount. Either way, I got the project. And for the first time in months, things felt possible again. Unfortunately, this is where the story should have improved. But freelancing had other plans. At first, everything was great. The client communicated clearly, paid the deposit immediately, answered questions, provided feedback. It felt suspiciously healthy, like finding a unicorn at a networking event. The project moved smoothly. I delivered strong work. The client loved it. Then something unexpected happened. He referred me. Then another person referred me. Then another. Suddenly, inquiries started appearing. Not hundreds, not dozens, but enough. Enough to create momentum. Enough to create hope. Enough to create a brand new problem. Because I had spent months learning how to survive without clients. I had absolutely no idea how to manage multiple clients. Nobody talks about this part. Everyone discusses getting clients. Nobody discusses what happens when several appear at the same time, which is basically freelancing's version of being attacked by raccoons. Everything becomes chaos immediately. One client wanted revisions. Another wanted a meeting. Another wanted an invoice. Another wanted an urgent project. Everything was urgent. Apparently, every business owner on Earth had discovered the concept of urgency simultaneously. My calendar looked like a game of Tetris designed by a psychopath. But I was making money. Real money. For the first time in months. And honestly, I became addicted. Because after struggling financially for so long, every new project felt like oxygen. So I started saying yes. To everything. Big mistake. Huge mistake. Catastrophic mistake. Because the more work I accepted, the less sleep I got. The less sleep I got, the worse my work became. The worse my work became, the more stressed I became. And that's when burnout quietly entered the room. Around this time, my income reached a level I'd once dreamed about. I wasn't rich, but I was finally paying bills comfortably. And yet, I felt worse, which made no sense. According to social media, more money was supposed to solve everything. Instead, I felt exhausted. My workday started at 7 a.m., sometimes ended after midnight. I was answering emails while eating lunch, taking client calls while grocery shopping, reviewing copy while standing in line for coffee. One day, I genuinely forgot what day of the week it was. Not as a joke. I had completely lost track of reality.
And then came the moment that should have warned me. I was sitting at my desk, 3 energy drinks deep, 5 deadlines active, 20 browser tabs open, and my computer crashed. Everything froze. The screen went black. Silence. I stared at the monitor. The monitor stared back. And then I laughed. Not a normal laugh. A slightly concerning laugh. The kind of laugh people make before becoming the subject of documentaries. Because I realized something. I had escaped corporate burnout, only to create freelance burnout. And somehow, I made it worse. At least, corporate jobs occasionally forced people to leave the office. Freelancing let me self-destruct from home. Then, the thing happened. The thing that almost ended everything. The thing I never saw coming. One of my largest clients disappeared. Gone. Vanished. Ghosted. Evaporated. This client represented almost 40% of my income. 40%! One day we were discussing project plans. The next day, nothing. Emails ignored. Messages ignored. Calls ignored. Weeks passed. Nothing. Then I checked the outstanding invoice. $8,700. Unpaid. My stomach dropped. I wish I could say I handled it professionally. I didn't. I refreshed my inbox approximately 8 million times. Every notification gave me false hope. Every silence increased panic. Because suddenly, all my old fears returned. What if this was temporary? What if all my success was fake? What if I ended up exactly where I started? And then, things became even worse. Because while waiting for payment, taxes arrived. Of course they did. Taxes have incredible timing. It's like they monitor emotional vulnerability. My accountant called. Never a sentence that improves your day. He explained how much I owed. The number was horrifying. Not because the taxes were wrong, because I hadn't prepared properly. I had spent months focusing on earning money, not managing money, which meant I suddenly faced missing client payments, tax obligations, business expenses, and growing anxiety, all at once. For a few days, I genuinely thought freelancing was over. Again. One night, I sat alone in my apartment. Same desk, same chair, same room where the journey started. But I felt completely different. I was tired, angry, embarrassed, confused. I had done everything I thought success required. Worked harder, got clients, earned more. Yet somehow I still felt unstable. Then I asked myself a question. A simple question. A brutally honest question. If this client disappeared tomorrow, what happens? The answer terrified me. Because the truth was obvious. I hadn't built a business. I had built dependence. Everything depended on a handful of clients, a handful of relationships, a handful of paychecks. And suddenly I understood why so many freelancers burn out. They're not running businesses. They're running financial tightropes. One bad month, one bad client, one emergency. Everything shakes. That realization changed how I approached freelancing forever. But first, I had to survive. The next morning, I made a decision. No panic, no desperation, no job applications, no doom scrolling, no comparing myself to fake internet millionaires. Instead, I treated freelancing like a business. For the first time, I built systems, follow-up processes, referral systems, client pipelines, emergency savings goals, monthly outreach targets, multiple income streams, retainer offers. I stopped chasing random projects,
started targeting specific industries, started building relationships, started thinking long term. And something incredible happened. Growth became predictable. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily. The roller coaster slowly became manageable. Eventually, the missing client situation got partially resolved. Not perfectly, but enough. The tax problems got handled. The systems improved. The stress decreased. And for the first time, freelancing stopped feeling like survival. It started feeling sustainable. A year later, my life looked completely different. Not millionaire different, not private jet on Instagram different, not I made 7 figures while sleeping different. Real different. The kind of different that actually matters. I could pay rent without opening a calculator. I could buy groceries without comparing pasta prices like I was negotiating an international trade agreement. I could take a weekend off without convincing myself my business would collapse. And honestly, that felt better than any income milestone. Because when I first started freelancing, I thought success meant making more money. Now I realize success meant sleeping through the night without wondering if my bank account was about to betray me. The weird part? My income eventually grew far beyond what I was making when I nearly quit. But it happened after I stopped obsessing over finding clients every single day. Instead, I focused on becoming the kind of freelancer clients remembered, the kind they referred, the kind they trusted, the kind they came back to. And that changed everything. But before that happened, I had one final lesson to learn. And it arrived in the most embarrassing way possible. One afternoon, I was working from a coffee shop. You know, living the freelance dream. Laptop open, headphones on, pretending I wasn't secretly eavesdropping on conversations for content ideas. At the table next to me sat a guy who looked exactly like every productivity influencer on the internet. Expensive laptop, perfect beard, fancy watch. The confidence of a man who definitely owns at least 3 online courses. He was talking loudly enough for everyone to hear, which should have been my first clue. Apparently, he was making 6 figures, maybe 7, possibly 9. The number seemed to increase every few minutes. Meanwhile, I was quietly working on a client project. And then I overheard something interesting. One of his friends asked, "So how many clients do you actually have?" The productivity guru paused, then awkwardly admitted, "Honestly, not many right now." That moment hit me like a truck, because for years I'd assumed everyone else had everything figured out. But sitting there, listening to this internet success machine struggle with the exact same problem I'd faced, I realized something important. Most freelancers are scared. Most freelancers feel uncertain. Most freelancers are making it up as they go. The difference isn't confidence. It's persistence. The people who survive aren't always the smartest. They're the ones who keep going long enough to figure things out. And trust me, that realization saved me. Because I stopped treating every setback like evidence that I should quit. A few months later, I received a message from someone who had been watching my content online, a new freelancer. He told me he'd been struggling for almost 6 months. No clients, no momentum, no confidence. He was thinking about quitting. As I read his message, I felt strangely emotional because it sounded exactly like me. The grocery store version of me. The panic version of me. The ramen noodle financial planner version of me. And I realized how close I'd come to walking away. If that email hadn't arrived, if that client hadn't reached out, if I had submitted those job applications, everything would have been different. But here's the thing. The email wasn't actually what changed my life. I used to think it was. Now I know better. The real turning point happened before the email arrived.
The real turning point happened when I decided not to quit. The opportunity showed up afterward. That's the part people miss. Opportunities usually don't arrive when you're confident. They arrive when you're exhausted, when you're frustrated, when you're questioning everything, when you're one bad day away from giving up. And that's exactly why so many people never see them.
If I could go back and talk to my younger self, here's what I'd say. Finding clients is not the hardest part of freelancing. Learning how to handle uncertainty is. Because nobody tells you about the emotional side. Nobody talks about refreshing your inbox 200 times. Nobody talks about wondering if you're talented enough. Nobody talks about the weird loneliness that comes from working alone every day. Nobody talks about the anxiety of waiting for payments. Nobody talks about watching your friends get promotions while you're debating whether buying guacamole is financially responsible. Freelancing isn't just a business challenge. It's an emotional challenge. And honestly, that's why so many talented people quit. Not because they're bad, because uncertainty is exhausting. I know. I lived it. But here's what I learned. Clients are not magic. They're people. Businesses are not mysterious. They're just groups of people trying to solve problems. And once I stopped chasing clients and started helping people solve specific problems, everything became easier. Not easy. Easier. There's a difference.
You want to know the funniest part? The thing that still makes me laugh? The client who nearly convinced me freelancing could work. The client whose email arrived at exactly the right time. The client who changed everything eventually stopped working with me. Completely normal. No drama, no disaster, no ghosting. The project simply ended. A few years earlier, that would have terrified me. I would have panicked, spiraled, opened LinkedIn and started emotionally applying for jobs. But this time, I didn't panic. Because by then, I understood something. No client is your business. Clients come and go. Systems stay. Relationships stay. Skills stay. Reputation stays. And confidence? Real confidence comes from knowing you can rebuild if necessary. Not from believing bad things will never happen. Because trust me, bad things absolutely happen. This is freelancing. Chaos is part of the subscription package. Not from believing bad things will never happen. Because trust me, bad things absolutely happen. This is freelancing. Chaos is part of the subscription package. A few months ago, I visited that same grocery store, completely by accident. I walked past the pasta aisle, the exact aisle where I nearly quit, the exact spot where I'd stood calculating 30-cent differences. And I just stopped for a second. Not because I was emotional. Okay, maybe a little emotional. Because that version of me genuinely thought everything was over. He thought not finding clients meant failure. He thought struggling meant he wasn't good enough. He thought everyone else had figured it out. And he was wrong. Completely wrong. That version of me just hadn't reached the next chapter yet. That's all. And honestly, maybe that's where some of you are right now. Maybe you're sending proposals. Maybe nobody's replying. Maybe you're questioning everything. Maybe you're wondering if you should quit. I get it. I've been there. More than once.
Looking back, I almost quit freelancing because I couldn't find clients. But that's not actually true. I almost quit because I thought struggling meant I was failing. I thought slow progress meant no progress. I thought uncertainty meant I was on the wrong path. Now, I know better. The early stage of freelancing is messy. It's awkward. It's stressful. It's confusing. It's full of mistakes. It's full of rejection. It's full of moments where you feel completely invisible.
And somehow, that's normal. The people you admire online, most of them experience the same thing. They just don't post about it, because screenshots of success get more likes than screenshots of panic. But the panic exists. Trust me. So, if you're watching this while refreshing your inbox, waiting for a client reply, wondering whether freelancing is worth it, here's what I'll tell you. The email that changes everything might not arrive today, or tomorrow, or next week. But if you keep improving, keep learning, keep showing up, and keep putting yourself in positions where opportunities can find you, eventually something happens. Sometimes when you least expect it, and sometimes right when you're about to quit. Because that's exactly what happened to me. I almost quit freelancing because I couldn't find clients. And looking back, I'm incredibly glad I didn't. Although I still refresh my inbox way too much. Some habits never die. And who knows, maybe the next email changes everything again. What's the closest you've ever come to quitting freelancing? Let me know in the comments.